Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. Thanks for coming. Today, we are here speaking with Kathleen Steffey, the CEO of Naviga Recruiting. Well, we know how much we all love recruiting. It is hard, it is complicated, it is time consuming, even when it seems like the easiest position ever. So this is where we get somebody who is maybe an executive search firm or does some recruiting to help us. So welcome. Hey, Kathleen, how you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming. We have so many questions for you, but before we jump in, tell us just a little bit about yourself, how your journey to where you ended up today as the CEO of Naviga Recruiting and Executive Search.
Sure. Well, I started out in human resources on the corporate recruiting side of recruiting. So I was in TA in corporate America, mostly tech and software companies. And then I moved on into starting Naviga. I worked my way up into leadership inside those, corporate recruiting environments. And then I shipped over to Europe and I was doing European recruiting as an expat for a software firm. And then when 9/11 hit, I came back to the US and I was like, what do I want to do? And so I started Naviga organically myself, and it's grown over the years.
Wow. Well, congratulations. And where are you located now?
I'm in Tampa. That's where our headquarters is.
Okay, I'm right down the road in St. Pete. So,
Cool.
yeah, very small world here.
Yeah.
And so you recruit and you help companies across the country. Where's your barriers?
Yeah, we help global businesses and domestic US companies if they want to hire sales, marketing, and operations from high level individual contributors to executive level. So anywhere from like your 80 to 90K up to 250 to 300 base type people. So
Okay, great.
yeah.
And it's a little bit of crazy times right now in the US with all the changes that are going on up above. And this affects recruiting, right? It affects companies plans of I thought I was going to grow, maybe I'm not, or I didn't think I was going to need to grow. Now I need to know. And so, as a recruiter in a search firm, you've got to be on the ball and be ready to just, switch left and right. What do you consider, your leadership style and what drives you?
Yeah. I've always been one that pivots. I've got to pivot. I've got to move fast, assess the landscape, make decisions based on that. But, over the years, I've settled into my leadership where it's a bit more methodical. I mean, I've been at this for some time now. So it's not all art. There is a science and a method behind, how my mind thinks when it comes to talent acquisition. So, as long as I keep moving and shaking and keep an open mind, we're gonna be fine.
Well,
So
I think you're there. You have been in publications like Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and I believe on platforms like CBS Job Market Report, right?
yep. Yeah,
Congratulations. That's
thank
huge.
you.
That's huge. As an entrepreneur myself, I understand today I'm like going back and forth between doing creating presentations and being the marketing queen, which I am not, but sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to do it all. So congratulations on your success. With
Thank you.
that said, let's help our listeners here who are mainly wearing some kind of HR hat. They may be in an actual HR seat or a seat that requires them to be 15 other things, including HR. And that's quite a challenge when you're growing, no matter where you're located in, because you have to all of a sudden be an IT expert when all you really wanted to do is make this widget or sell this service over here. So
Yep.
when you were starting your own firm, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when starting out? And how did you overcome them? And then we could transfer that into helping other people overcome them through recruiting efforts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I went from essentially, I had an LLC and I started the business as an independent consultant. So what I had intended for myself isn't even where it is today. Yeah,
Same.
really? Yeah, yeah. It's kind of grown organically over the years and just beautifully. So I didn't have a grand plan. At first, I was just doing recruiting for a lot of my former hiring managers in corporate, talent acquisition. And it just grew from that. I was like, wow. I think that hiring managers are drawn to me. I'm finding this kind of easy. The dots are connecting. And so I'm going to keep riding this wave. And that's how it happened. There wasn't just like a big aha moment. It happened organically and naturally and after pivoting and figuring it out. So I just had to keep kind of shaping my mindset. Nothing happened just and said, Kathleen, this is how it's going to go. I just had to keep an open mind.
Yeah, and I think for our listeners, my piece of advice to you as the HR lady is, just dealing with employee engagement. In the case that you and I are referring to, we were our own employees in the end and had to be engaged. But I heard what you just said a moment ago, where you're saying, well, it was working and it was kind of easy. The work part that you're passionate about is the easy part. As a business owner, all the other things are the difficult part.
Yep.
But engagement is what really strikes me. So I just want to talk a little bit more about employee engagement and culture and how we really should be focusing on that in our recruiting efforts, internal recruiting or external recruiting. And I have a statistic here from Gallup. 32% of US employees are engaged in their work. And I should really say only 32% of US employees are engaged in their work, while 17% are actively disengaged. Yikes. Sadly, I'm not shocked by that. But companies with highly engaged employees, which are very limited, right? So highly engaged employees have 21% higher profitability than those with the lower engagement levels. That just makes sense to me. So this
Yeah.
reinforces the need for a strong company culture, which you also need to focus on in recruiting, and then strong leadership to improve that engagement and that recruiting and the retention. So talk to me about that. Like, how do you mix engagement into your recruiting efforts? Like, how do you find out what's important to your clients and make sure you're asking that of the candidates?
Yeah. I mean, you've got to put the puzzle pieces together and determine what's going to hit, right? Like, it really depends culturally based on how fast the company works, what kind of tech stack they have. Like, do they have a lot of tools to do their job? Are they in growth mode? Are they a business that's recovering? Are they a business that's maintaining? Are they private equity backed, or VC backed? Because so all these things kind of change the culture and what that looks like to match the candidate's interest and true skill sets. So, say for an example, if you've got a company that is in growth mode, you're generally going to be finding somebody that has a track record of working in a growth oriented environment, somebody who can move quick, somebody who can pivot, but oh, by the same way, not mess up and make a million mistakes, so you're at the same time, if somebody has that experience, they're going to want that type of environment too, and they're going to do better in that environment. So it's kind of matching certain kind of those pillars I told you about and matching it to somebody's experience level to make sure there's a cultural fit so you can retain them and attract them. So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
not only asking technical questions, but asking behavioral based interviewing questions and making sure that they match the company culture. And in my books that I've written, I talk about company values. So not everybody may have strict written company values, but the words are there somewhere, in their marketing or in their HR policies. I always make sure that I'm asking questions related to behavior, because I got to tell you, as the HR lady, when I was in corporate HR, or now when I'm, an HR consultant and I'm doing speaking and training on these items, when my phone rings, it's not because things are going well. It's because somebody's acting a fool, right?
yeah,
They're being a jerk at work. They're acting a fool. They're having a little bit of an attitude problem. And
yeah,
sometimes managers, even HR, is left scratching their head, going, I don't know what to do. And one thing I do is I help them readjust their attitude and everything by holding them accountable to the company values. You do have to sometimes train people on this because they may not know what your terminology means. But I also tell everybody, please start interviewing for these values so that we don't
Yeah.
hire jerks, even though they're the smartest person in the world technically. I still
Yeah.
want them to not be a jerk because
Right.
it's going to cost us a lot of money if we get sued over harassment or discrimination or bias. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. I mean, completely. And environmentally, right? Environmentally, are they a fit environment wise? Have they been in this environment before? And can we have confidence that they're going to work in this environment now? Right? Even outside of behaviors, it's really connecting the dots and getting rid of the subjective art part of recruiting and really looking a bit of the science, like what is matching here, right?
Yeah.
And registering. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to say too is with this amazing thing called AI, ChatGPT is like my new best friend. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. But other people could be using it to take your job ad and make their resume change into their job ad so it matches. Let's face it, we've been doing this for eons. We've just been doing it manually, right?
Yeah.
We'd be as a candidate, and I would even tell my friends who are looking, get the job ad and make sure your resume has the keywords in there. So if they're doing a search online with the computer system or with a human who knows what they're doing, that your resume matches. I'm like, just don't lie because they're going to find out during the interview. But now with AI, it's made it so much easier. So if recruiters, staff recruiters, on staff, if they're just like quickly going through things and like, yeah, let's interview this person. Yeah, let's hire this person because their resume match, you just got fooled by an AI system, right?
Big time, big time. And now in applicant tracking systems and HRIS systems, they have security surveillances that can pick up on that.
Oh,
If you're
really?
using AI, oh yeah, there's too many patterns now where you can tell if it's just completely being copied. So
Yeah.
people should really look into that to determine if they can use that in their HRIS systems to see who's playing the game here wrong.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
And there's, like I said, listen, folks, there's always been some kind of game in between recruiting, the recruiters and the candidates. And it's, because if you get 100 resumes in, you got to figure out a way to narrow it down, especially when there's only one person looking at those 100 resumes. And because of technology, it's so much easier to get 100 resumes. 97 of them are, full of it and get declined, but you
Right.
still need to make sure. And then on the other side, I wanted to just say, if for the people that are listening, if you're recruiting and if you're in a field that it's a more hands-on field and the person's not going to need to be like a philosopher or editor or writer, well, don't judge them because their resume has, poor wording or something like that. I hate when people do that. They're like, oh, their resume was horrible. I'm like, well, their job isn't to edit or publish. So why are we judging them when their job is to put in AC units over here? But
Right.
why don't we ask better technical questions and stop judging people? And then we will probably get the great candidates, right?
Yeah, I love that practical view. I completely agree. Don't major in the minors if you don't have to, right? So,
Absolutely. All right.
mhm.
So I have some other questions, against for culture and talent acquisition. But before that, I just wanted to let our listeners know that the format of these podcasts have now changed. They used to be 5 to 7 minute podcasts, once a day, Monday through Friday, and now we're just doing it all at once for 30 minutes. And so you will still get a 30-minute HRCI or SHRM credit when you log into the Aurora Training Advantage website/podcast. So that bio will be in the link. With that said, let's dive back into Kathleen's perspective here on what makes an effective talent acquisition strategy in today's competitive market. Where
Yeah.
do we even start?
I really think you need to start with thinking at a very high level with the employer brand and keeping that employer brand at the forefront. Because if the brand of your organization is not tip top, a candidate is going to pass these days, right? Because what do? The first thing that they do is due diligence on your business and they look at your reviews, whether it's a Google review, Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever. So you've got to protect that employer brand at the forefront of anything else when it comes to a TA strategy. Because if that's not in line, it's not good. So a business that is being responsive, right, to candidates, whether it's in automation or somebody speaking, that's very hard to do, right? To get back to every candidate, not even realistic. But if you don't have automations today in your HRIS system that's responding to candidates to make them know you received their a resume, it's not good. Nobody wants to be ghosted. And you have to be collaborative, right? And once somebody's in the process, be able to be responding to them once they're interviewing, showing them that the business is moving, right? Inviting them to next stages in a very fast manner. They're looking at this and they're judging culture based on how you move and how accessible you are, no matter how big of a business you are, how accessible you are, because information they have access to at their fingertips. So they want you to be accessible too if you're inviting them in their world.
Yeah, I love it. I actually found a statistic, a LinkedIn Global Talent Trends report showed that this is huge. 75% of job seekers consider an employer's brand before applying to a job. So again, this just emphasizes the importance of companies building a strong employer brand to attract top talent. And let's face it, with social media, there's so many different websites that job seekers can go to that employers aren't really necessarily allowed to go to, where they can talk about your company. And guess what, folks? Most people aren't going there to say, I have a great company. They're going there to complain, right? And they're going there to warn other people to stay away from XYZ or ABC over here. So I would highly encourage everybody that's listening today to consider doing an employee survey sooner than later and at least once a year. And maybe you just want to start with one department at a time. That's fine. I could help you with that off this podcast here, but I really, really suggest that every company, I don't care if you have 5 employees or 5,000 employees, you should really consider doing an employee survey at least once a year, where you can get the feel for how do my employees feel about me? Are they bragging about us so that we can get other candidates? Do they have one foot out the door, or worse, did they already quit, but they're still taking the paycheck, right? Now, little small caveat that I have there, do not do an employee survey if you don't plan on taking any action on it. If you don't plan on reading the results and doing something about it, your employees will never do the survey for you ever again. And their morale will even sink even less. So important. Okay, continuing the conversation, Kathleen, on culture. How do you see company culture impacting the recruitment process? Like, what are the biggest mistakes companies make when it comes to talent acquisition regarding, the brand, and how the heck do you avoid them? What if you have a bad brand? Do you just admit it and say, I'm working on it?
Well, I think the impact that HR can have in this process is being more intentional from the beginning, right? With hiring managers to coach them. When you're starting a search, right? Say you get a new controller position, have a huddle up that is extensive to not only collect the requirements of the position and how this person is going to impact that department, but also, okay, I consult the hiring manager to say, listen, hiring manager, this is what I need you to know about what the market is doing right now and how we need to protect ourselves to the marketplace. Number one thing is our employer brand, right? And so with that, how you can support the perception of our brand in this process is by being responsive, right? By being reactionary, by collaborating with me. If I can't find somebody in this particular, box that you need me to find, so we can pivot and open it, right? To be open a little bit on comp, a little bit. Let's not go crazy, but let's just do this together and partner up, and we can have a better experience for the candidates, and in turn get an amazing review, right? Envision yourself wanting a 5-star review by every candidate that comes inside this process and touches our brand in some fashion. We want a 5-star Google review from everyone that touches it. And it's so interesting because that's how I operate Naviga. We've got over 500 Google reviews because we have a process that we want to hear from our clients and our candidates. And if we get even one negative review, we're huddling up, right? And so that's the same perception you have to have about the candidate marketplace when they're entering your corporate brand and your
Yeah.
corporate recruiting process.
Yeah, it's marketing. Business is marketing. And
Yep.
so you have to market to candidates if you're a recruiting firm, right? And then you need to also market to employers who are going to trust you to find their candidates because let's face it, recruiting is expensive. Whether
Yeah.
you're hiring an external firm, whether you're hiring a recruiter who's kind of be part of your company as a 1099 or a consultant, or if you have internal recruiting, even if you don't have an actual recruiting department, you have to take your managers off of their job to do the interviews, regardless of where your main source of recruiting comes from. And I really don't think companies are prepared for that. They're like, oh yeah, manager, just add this to your job duties. You're going to interview these people. It's like, no, we shouldn't just be waving that as this will just take a few minutes. Because if it's only going to take a few minutes, you're rushing through the interviewing process and
Yeah.
it's incredibly costly. So many of our listeners are wearing the HR hat. How do they sell this to their executives to say, hey, we have these openings and we're struggling. And I really think we need to allow the manager to, maybe farm out some duties somewhere else for the next month or two until we get these positions. How do they sell that to the executives?
Yeah. Uh, can you repeat that? So they farm out the duties
So they like maybe they say, okay, the manager has 5 projects and they have a 6th project, which is recruiting, right?
Yeah.
How do we either extend the other projects deadlines so that they can fit in the 6th project of recruiting, or how do they maybe say, hey, manager from the other department, I need your help over here while I need to fill this position. I feel like we just keep throwing things on our managers and then our hiring managers are struggling and then we can't get the right person. So how does HR or whoever's wearing the HR hat explain that to the executives that says, hey, we're missing it here. We're not able to hire anybody because nobody has time to dedicate to this.
Yep, got it. So I think let's start with getting some data. Let's say if you've got 5 hiring managers that are kicking off new searches in the month, right? I think an important question that HR can ask that hiring manager is, what percentage of time do you have to work on this yourself?
That's a great question.
Right? And is this getting in the way of your other key projects? I understand this is not, a revenue based or, impacting your whatever it might be, but I'd like to understand how we're going to partner up on this. And if you show that you're empathizing in advance with that hiring manager and not pounding down their neck, and you're showing that, listen, you really want to partner with them, and they say, listen, Kathleen, I only have like 10% of the time to do this and I don't know how I'm going to do it. That's a data point, right? And then if your next person says, oh, I only have 50% of the time, da, da, da. So now we can start building a case to have a discussion with executives that say, hey, want you to know our HMs can't do this. So if you're wondering why, our time to fill has lingered from 45 days, best practice average across all organizations to 90, it's because Bill, in manufacturing can't even breathe. So what can we do here? And here are my recommendations on what you could do to help him. Can we hire somebody temporarily to help him? Can I hire somebody to do the front leg of his due diligence? Can we pull in Sam from another department who was in manufacturing a year ago and now has been promoted to maybe help a little bit with the due diligence? So start with data points so you just don't come at it with somebody's too busy, right? And have enough volume to create a case about maybe looking at things differently.
I love it. So get data points to build a case to basically ask the executives or whoever is in charge of the budget, can we hire someone to help the hiring manager do their current job? Or to help him or her during the interviewing process so that we can get a shorter time to fill, closer to 45 days or less, correct?
Yes.
And it all starts with asking the hiring manager before we put the job ad out, hey,
Yep.
what percent of your time or how many hours do you have to work on this opening over the next 45 days? And I want to stress that before you put the job ad out, please.
Before. And Wendy, this is reiterating my statement. You've got to huddle up and talk about what this job is about. Don't just take the rec and go start recruiting. If you get a rec, hold a meeting, and have a conversation about it in detail so you understand what's going on, and then use that moment to ask that intentional question.
My one last question is about compensation, but more about total compensation. And I just kind of came up with this idea when you were talking. So I'm going to throw this at you out of nowhere here. But I don't think a lot of people, from executives to HR and hiring managers, understand that there's a pay that goes in your paycheck, and then there's total compensation. And I don't think people realize until they don't have benefits, like you and I, when we first started our own companies, and we go, oh, I no longer have benefits. I no longer have paid PTO or paid vacation or paid sick time or insurance. I have to pay for all that on my own. So if somebody has a company has really great benefits, but okay pay, how do you sell that to candidates? It's a hard one.
It is. I mean, sometimes it's going to be what it's going to be, and somebody is just not going to be interested, no matter how you're spinning it. And I hate saying selling because, right? It's like almost like an assumed you're putting a spin on something to make it sound good. But it's how do you position it? And you position it with it is what it is. You get the facts, and hopefully with those benefits you can quantify them, right?
Yes.
If HR can quantify how much those benefits could mean financially to the candidate, there's a lot to work with there.
There really is. There
right?
Really is.
That's how you can position.
You really can. And so HR, please know the value of all of your benefits and make sure that the hiring manager knows. They don't need to be an expert, but they should at least have some kind of tip sheet or something that says, okay, by the way, we have, free long-term care, we have free this, or we pay for all this, that, or the other. Those things may not be important to that candidate. So it's there, you might lose them. They might say, I don't want them. Well, we know behind the scenes as HR, certain plans, we can't just say you can't be on that one, like retirement. It's one and all. Like you could choose not to contribute yourself, but the company can't just change it for the one person because of laws. So benefits are super important. And I wanted to share that because as a solarpreneur, I ain't got no benefits. And so it's all about the dollar to me. Like, no, you're paying me dollars. That's about it. And I'm paying for everything else. But I do realize also that most humans, they don't know the value of the benefits until they lose them and have to get them on their own. So having that, explanation, I remember a long time ago when I was in corporate HR, and the first time I ever did it, young in my career, was really spelling out, these are the costs of all the benefits that we pay for all of our employees. I was shocked, and our employees were shocked because we had really, really good benefits. And I think there was an appreciation there, especially once they started having babies and all that stuff. It was definitely a younger company, but we hired a lot from college. So wanted to throw that out there. With that said, final thoughts from you, Kathleen, CEO of Naviga Recruiting and Executive Search. Any advice for listeners who want to improve their recruitment strategies? Of course, contact you so you can help them, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, but listen, we want everybody to get better. There's enough good business out there for everybody to get better, and all these corporations and HR and internal TA to just keep getting better and advancing themselves. And I would just say, I've said a few points here about that collaboration with the hiring manager. I've mentioned employer brand. I would say if you start with having that employer brand at tip top of mind, and then have those conversations with the hiring manager that are very intentional at the beginning, you're going to be in good shape. You're going to create a level of command that you might have never seen with that partnership.
I love it. How can our listeners connect with you?
Look me up on LinkedIn, Kathleen Steffey.
Yeah, I'll make sure that your bio link for LinkedIn is in the podcast notes. With that said, thank you so much. This has been awesome. It's totally motivated me to maybe kick some of my clients in the pants a little bit of saying, all right, we're stopping everything until you get your ducks in a row. And I want to talk to the hiring manager personally. And I will definitely be sure to be sending people your way as well. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We hope this information has been helpful. Take care.
Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.